Welcome to the Daily AI News Digest for August 19th, 2026. This broadcast is sponsored by bestai.org. I'm your anchor. Today, we're cutting through the marketing noise to examine the actual corporate maneuvers and technical realities shaping the artificial intelligence sector. Let's get right into the market. On the agenda today, we're tracking the biggest market moves, the latest product and model realities, key regulatory signals, our analysts' take on what it all means, and finally, what you need to watch next. Starting with our first segment, the biggest moves today, focusing on markets and data scarcity. Looking at Wall Street, public markets pulled further back from their all-time highs yesterday. The S&P 500 fell 0.7%, and the Nasdaq Composite sank 1.3%. Institutional investors are clearly weighing the massive capital expenditures required for current AI infrastructure against the actual realized profitability of these systems. But in the private markets, capital momentum is still accelerating. Anthropic just reported a seven-fold revenue increase. That pushes them to $65 billion in annualized revenue. And there are serious discussions of a potential $1 trillion fall IPO. At the same time, hardware firm Etched saw its valuation double to $21 billion in just a single month. All that capital is heavily targeting raw materials, specifically training data. In a fascinating move, Google recently outbid AI data broker Mercor to purchase the internal corporate archive of the bankrupt Spirit Airlines for a cool $10 million. This transaction secures decades of de-identified operational data. We're talking 100 million employee emails, 500 million Teams messages, and 30 million lines of production code. It strictly excludes customer payment and loyalty profiles, so this is a pure acquisition of non-public enterprise knowledge, which really highlights the intense premium hyperscalers are placing on novel data sets as public web data becomes exhausted. Moving to segment 2, product and model realities, let's examine the shift towards specialization. The mid-August release cycle shows the ecosystem is rapidly fragmenting into distinct, highly optimized tiers. On the open weight side, Moonshot's 2.8 trillion parameter Kimi K3 allows organizations to run frontier-level models locally. Commercially, Google's Gemini 3.6 Flash is laser-focused on high-volume automation, while Anthropic's Claude Opus 5.6 and OpenAI's GPT 5.6 Sol are engineered specifically for complex logical reasoning. The enterprise willingness to pay a premium for these specific capabilities is highly measurable. Data from Vercel shows developers are currently paying 4.4 times the average per token price just to access Anthropic models. Organizations are willing to absorb this premium because it demonstrably reduces the correction rounds on long, complex coding tasks. However, this pace of technical advancement is forcing some very real operational pauses. OpenAI has actually halted reinforcement learning on its upcoming Astra model for 2 weeks. In their public statement, they explicitly cited that the model is approaching critical cyberattack capabilities. This marks the first time a frontier lab has utilized too capable as the official reason to delay a deployment. This defensive posture is visible across their operations. While pausing Astra, OpenAI promised to expand its preparedness framework, which is interesting because they just disbanded the original team behind it. Meanwhile, on the consumer front, under mounting legal pressure, they launched a heavily restricted ChatGPT for Teens, which features forced quiet hours and strict safety locks. Segment 3 brings us to regulation and policy, where we are tracking some major shifting business signals. Researchers at MIT have quantified a concept they are calling attribution decay. Through extensive testing on diffusion models, they prove that as training datasets grow larger, removing a specific piece of training data, or even an entire artist's portfolio, mathematically results in almost zero statistical change to the final generated output. The implications here for current litigation are massive. If removing a piece of data does not alter the output, it becomes mathematically impossible to attribute that output to the original data. This effectively severs the audit trail. For regulators and courts attempting to enforce copyright attribution, this research presents a very steep technical hurdle. Which brings us to segment 4, the analyst's take. We're looking at an industry speeding with the brakes on. We are witnessing a dual-pedal reality right now. On the accelerator, you have explosive private revenue growth, $10 million bids for defunct corporate data, and the aggressive deployment of trillion-parameter models. But simultaneously, the brakes are engaging. Public market skepticism is pulling down stocks, genuine security threats are forcing deployment pauses, and fundamental legal questions remain completely unresolved. So, the strategic question for institutional investors and enterprise architects is no longer just about acquiring raw compute power. The core challenge is navigating a landscape where these systems are hitting physical data limits and legal copyright limitations at the exact moment they become too capable for unmonitored release.
Finally, Segment 5, What to Watch Next.
Keep your eyes on the Southern District of New York today, where the bankruptcy court will rule on that Google Spirit Airlines data sale. Tomorrow, federal agencies face the CISA patching deadline for the Ray framework. And looking further ahead, the FDA's public docket for Gen AI medical devices remains open for feedback until October. As capital continues to flow while physical and legal constraints tighten, we leave you with this thought. If output attribution is mathematically impossible, who ultimately holds the liability when autonomous agents make the wrong call? Thank you for joining us for this explainer. This has been the Daily AI News Digest, sponsored by bestai.org.